There's been a lot of split criticism on the TV show Stranger Things, with some people saying, wow, this is like one of the best shows they've ever seen, and then of course other people saying it fell short in so many ways, the plot, the characters, and so forth. I would say I fall a little bit in the middle of those two opinions in some ways. To me, the strength of the show was the characters. I think that all the actors kind of knocked it out of the park, and the friction between some of the characters was just very enjoyable to watch. They just had very strong personalities. I think you should go watch the show for yourself to see what I'm talking about. I would say a few of them did fall short. Eleven herself, to me, kind of falls into the trope of a kick-ass heroine that has too few flaws and is hard to relate to because everything just seems to come very easily to her. She's not facing the great challenges that your typical hero faces. And I think I see that a lot with female main characters in TV shows, unfortunately. But who doesn't love the idea of having immense telekinetic powers? The character of Will as well, these are some of the most powerful characters. I found him to be on the mopey side, and that is in the tradition of some 1980s and 1990s TV shows and films, so I guess they capture the nostalgia there. But I would say that it was really some of the more side characters that really shone and stood out to me as just extremely intensely likable. People that are very memorable. They're like that weird Russian guy who's constantly making jokes. The radio DJ announcer with the smoky voice who just is very self-deprecating. She was great. I'll give a shout out to my fellow redhead, Max. And in the final season, Holly, the young girl who's caught in this crazy psychic world trap that the main bad character, Vecna himself, was a pretty engaging bad guy. I mean, so these were all just like standout characters. Now, the plot itself and the world building, yeah, there's a few flaws there, probably a few plot holes. I like the fact that the brothers that produced this show were trying to recreate the 80s or recapture the 80s in a somewhat honest way. I think they did fall short in a few ways, but for the most part, they captured it. Some of that is like the way in 1980s films they would ratchet up the suspense. A lot of it was like kind of a fun back and forth between the characters and the audience. There would even be like side characters having reactions like, oh my gosh. And the audience relates to one-off scenes of somebody just like jaw-dropping like, oh my god, or some kind of sassy reaction like, what? On top of that, it was interesting that they tried to time the releases for holidays, like Christmas and New Year's, so that the most people would be watching at the same time and having a shared experience, which was how film in the 1980s and 1990s was. It was a shared experience for families and for friends. And kudos to them for trying to recapture that. I've talked about in other videos how I think that what made those 1980s, 1990s films and TV shows kind of great was that the studios were more willing to take risks. They were taking financial risks on very much unknown, crazy things that hadn't been done before. And stories that were not popular. They weren't just trend following, which I think is the case now. And although Stranger Things really knocks it out of the park in terms of nostalgia, I'm not sure that it resonates with today's younger audiences. Like, I'm not sure that somebody who grew up in today's world would fully like get hit in the feels the way the Gen Xers were hit in the feels when they were growing up in 1980 watching The Neverending Story or Beetlejuice or those kind of films. I love the fact that Frank Darabont directed some of these episodes. He was a big fan of Stephen King, and I believe he directed The Shawshank Redemption and some of the more popular King movies. So they were asking the right people. They got the right people involved. Of course, they got Linda Hamilton, who played Sarah Connor in the Terminator movies, and Winona Ryder, who was a big actress in Beetlejuice and so forth. The production value, too, was just great, sets and costumes. One final thought is that ending, the 5th season. I'm not going to spoiler it for you, but there's kind of a sacrifice of a character there that I think was very long. It was a hard wrap-up, hard to swallow for a lot of people, including me. I think that tragic endings are easy to go for when it's a project you get tired of, speaking as an epic series author, and I know other authors have said the same thing. There's kind of a tendency to just like, all right, let's knock down the dominoes now that we set them all up. And I wonder if the director fell prey to that and wanted to just say, okay, well, all right, everyone, we want to hit you in the feels one last time, and here's our best chance to do that. And so, yeah, I'm not 100% of a fan of the way they ended it. It was all right, but I wonder if it lands as well with audiences right now as it would in the 1990s, where tragic endings were more acceptable, honestly, than now. I think that people in this era are looking for a little bit more happy escapism. That's just my sense of things as an author and somebody who watches a lot of media and all that. Overall, I'm going to recommend the show. To me, it was just a lot of fun to watch. don't go in with the highest of expectations. I think some of the disappointment came from people that went in with extremely high expectations. I'm not really sure. All right, that was my review of Stranger Things Unspoiled.